Hello and welcome to another episode of Stories from the Pack from Wolves Fancast. On this series, what we do, we invite someone on each episode really to talk through the highs and the lows of supporting Wolves and talk about their first memories, the first ever time they followed the Wolves. On this episode, I'm delighted to be joined by Joe, the Wolves correspondent for the Express and Star. How are you?
Yeah, not too bad, mate. Not too bad. Always happy to be talking Wolves. So yeah, let's crack on, mate. It's good to be on here.
Brilliant. No, I mean, at the time of recording, I've read sort of an article from yourself, so I'm conscious that that's made, it's a moving picture. But as we're talking now, I think the coronavirus tests have gone out, and it doesn't appear at this stage that any Wolves players are affected.
Yeah, that's right. Yeah, so the understanding is that Wolves have been given the all clear. They wanted to train obviously in small groups of 5 at Compton, and they can do that now. I mean, we're talking about it a few months back. It'd be crazy to think, just shooting practice and a bit of passing drills would be so exciting. But that's kind of the world we live in now. And yeah, these lads can actually pass the ball to each other and edit to each other, whatever you want. And fingers crossed we're on the right path now.
Brilliant. I mean, this is the thing, and I was thinking just before we came on, I think for someone like yourself who's followed Wolves this year, either from a fan or on a professional level, the amount of games that we've had, I mean, it's been sort of non-stop. So it just seems crazy from a Wolves perspective, all of a sudden to go, oh, okay, we're on pause. And at first I thought, actually, this might be useful because if any team needs a break, it's Wolves. But then the longer it goes on, you don't want to lose that momentum as well.
Yeah, I think that's it. I remember was it John Richards? I think I spoke to the other week. Obviously, massive club legend, and he was saying, the way Wolves were going, that he reckoned they would have won the Europa and they would have got at least 6th. So, I mean, there's nothing stopping them from doing it once football restarts, but getting that momentum back will be a bit of a challenge. And I know Nuno says it a lot, but he says it for a reason. He always points out the 12th man and the importance of the fans. And I think, you look at Wolves, obviously they're a talented bunch, can play in any environment, really. But I think Molineux has been a big factor in Wolves' success over the past few years. That I don't think you'll find many grounds, if any, that are louder in the Premier League. So adjusting to that, whether it's going to be neutral venues, or whether they are allowed to play at Molineux, not having that safe bank and stuff behind them might take maybe a week or 2 to get adjusted to.
I think this is it. So I think we're all waiting to see, as I say, sort of when football resumes, and as you say, in sort of what capacity and what the different dynamic will be. But before lockdown 2020 came along, if we start where we always do, really at the beginning. So for yourself, Joe, I'm interested. What's your first memories as a Wolves fan, either going to the game or the first time you got a Wolves kick? What sort of your first Wolves memories for yourself as a fan?
Pretty random, actually. Yeah, it wasn't like a monumental game or anything like that. Grew up in kind of a family of Wolves fans. And as a kid, kind of just randomly gravitated towards players. Like when I was about 4, 5, and this is going back. But like, for example, I really like Robbie Fowler because he wore the tape on his nose.
Iconic.
I don't know why, but it just like made him stand out. I remember really liking Ronnie Johnson as well, just because I thought he had a nice name. But just like things like that. So in my early years, I didn't really. I didn't kind of gravitate towards straight away, if you like. It was more, I don't know, towards players. I used to gravitate towards players. I used to really like Michael Owen and stuff like that. But then I think it was August of 2002. It was pre-season friendly. It might have been July, but that summer of 2002, it was a pre-season friendly against Newcastle. Was my first game. I just remember just being kind of taken aback by the kind of, it was obviously the sun was out and everything like that. Just being taken aback by all the gold all around you. It was just like nothing you'd really ever seen before. Obviously, you see Liverpool and Man United in the red and Chelsea in the blue and stuff like that. But Wolves was completely unique in that respect, in the gold and black. I mean, I guess you could count Hull, but I mean, that's besides the point. Just remember being taken aback by that and seeing that game. I think Shearer was playing for Newcastle that day. Loire got both goals for Newcastle. It was 2-0, I think he finished, and he did his cartwheel, handstand, backflip, celebration, whatever it was. And from that point, really, I was hooked. I remember getting me top not long after that. An unimaginative Joe 9 on the back, and that was the Doritos top. That was, Admiral Doritos. I think that one gets a bit of a bad rap. I don't know, maybe because it's a bit more special to me because it was my first one. Those are kind of the early memories, and then from that point, really, was hooked and supported the club, and now, of course, covering the club ever since.
It's brilliant, and I think what you say there, Joe, it ties in with, I think, a lot of people's memories of the club. And I know everybody's club is their own club, and we are obviously biased. Yourself as a fan and working as a correspondent as well. But what you mentioned, the ground and how it looks, it's iconic, isn't it? It is one of those stadiums where it's not sort of a model stadium which could be replicated by a number of teams. And there's something about the ground, perhaps where it's situated, in the city centre, that I feel that there is a feel to it, and it's an undeniable buzz. And sometimes it's not what's on the pitch; it's that first experience of going to the game, seeing the stands, seeing the seats, and going. And I think Wolves have worked on that identity, as and in terms of the pack, and it's unmistakable, isn't it, Molineux?
Yeah, it is. I don't know. I can't exactly put my finger on the pulse as to what it is. I mean, if someone asked me to describe it, I think I might struggle. And I mean, I'm a journalist, and I'm supposed to be good with words. But I don't know. If somebody told me to say what makes Molineux so special, I think I'd struggle to sum it up succinctly. It's just got an aura and an atmosphere that I just haven't really ever seen anywhere else. I mean, as you say, you get all these kind of rent-a-kit grounds, St Mary's. I mean, the King Power. You're just changing red seats for blue seats, aren't you? Really? They're all just kind of a bowl shape, and they're nice for what they are, but they are very similar to each other. There's not really anything that makes them stand out. And at Wolves, it's always had that, as you say, unique feel. I mean, like even little things now, like having the temporary corner. I mean, I know it's a temporary thing, which has ended up lasting about 10 years anyway. But it's other grounds don't really have that. The big screens, I know they weren't working for a lot of years, but stuff like that as well, and obviously the big North Bank now. I mean, which is massive and obviously stands out from wherever you are in the city, right? There's just little things that kind of all add up to make Molineux, as you say, a really unique and special place.
Absolutely. And in terms of being unique and special, what games would you say stand out for you at Molineux, either when you first started going, or perhaps in recent years? I know obviously the team is, for many of our generations, arguably the best we've seen. We know about the 50s and the 70s, and perhaps weren't fortunate to see that. What was sort of, I guess, your highest moment as a Wolves fan? What was the moment when you thought, God, it doesn't get any better than this?
I think this might be a bit of an obvious answer, but the United game in the Cup last season, it's just, I don't know, it's different emotions, I think. You do, when you're a journalist, obviously you're still a fan, but you do kind of have to separate separate the two a little bit, and it is a different feeling. But just seeing Wolves, beat Man United and beat them handedly, really, and completely deservedly. That atmosphere as well was something I'd never really experienced at Molineux before. I thought, you're talking some of the performances we'd already seen under there. Now we knew Wolves were onto something, but I think that was the game where you look back at it and you think, right, Wolves have arrived now. They're back in the big time. They mean business. They're not just here to make up the numbers. Even though it wasn't in the league and it wasn't, to cement a finish, even though it weren't a final, and we obviously know what happened in the semi-final. I think that quarter-final will always be looked back upon as having major significance in terms of Wolves rubber stamping themselves as a proper top-flight team, and just being there to witness it was really special, really special. So some of the other games, that Rotherham 6-4, I was there for that. I was in the North Bank, and in that kind of corner bit, that bit where the kind of sometimes
the quadrant,
sometimes section it off because you can't see properly over the top of the Steve ball.
Yeah, I'm with you.
Right by that. I think there was a full house that day, and I think they may well have just opened them seats. But that Sam Ricketts goal was it was just kamikaze, wasn't it? It was just one end. Yeah. You score, we score, you score, we score. And that season actually was one of my favourites as a fan. It just exclusively as a fan, if you like. Because at the time I was, how old would I have been at the time? Probably about 16, 17, something like that. And that's when I probably. Well, a bit younger actually, probably about 14. But it was going to games, quite a lot then. A lot of the kind of evening games as well. I mean, tickets were cheaper as well. I mean, it's little things like that. But of course, when we're in the Premier League and stuff like that under McCarthy, you'd struggle to get a seat, or you'd have to sit in that temporary stand if you wanted to just go on the day. But when we're in League One, you could, if you wanted to go to a game, you could go to a game really. And the Crawley game that season, that was a good game. But just the novelty and the kind of perhaps the reality check of, no disrespect, but seeing teams like Stevenage come to Molineux with Francois Oko playing up front. It was such a far cry from anything else that I'd seen at Molineux that, I don't know, you strangely appreciated it. And I think that season, and obviously Kenny Jackett as well. We of course Nuno was taking the club to giddy heights that a lot of us had never seen before. But I think Kenny Jackett also deserves that credit for getting Wolves back on the right path, because as we've seen with so many other clubs, you get relegated to League One and things can quickly go to pot. So that was a good season, that was, and it helped seeing wins pretty much every week.
I think that's the thing, and I was chatting to Paul Berry when he did his, and he signalled out even the League One season, because I think for the reasons you mentioned, that it was probably a little bit of a novelty, because I guess fans had been accustomed to the ups and downs and kind of hanging on, really, let's be honest, in the Premiership, and then we had the double dip, and then it kind of felt a point where it was like, okay, let's move on. It's a bit of a bookmark moment. Let's wipe the slate and let's start again. And I think it was such a pivotal season, because God forbid if we didn't get up that year, as we've seen with other clubs, of similar size to us, you could really struggle. But the fact that, I guess, the fans brought into it, and I think your point about Kenny Jackett, I certainly felt that he was just such the right fit, because he brought into what we needed at that time. And I think as much as it's great now, we've had ups and downs, and we'll perhaps in a moment we'll look at things when they weren't so good. But I think that League One season, you're right. I think in future, with however good this team goes on, and if it even goes higher than it is right now, we're going to look back and say that was I wouldn't say the start because it's a different regime, as you say, but it kind of real got the feel good factor at the right time, which I think we needed, as you say.
Yeah, it was just. I think obviously the benefit of hindsight, you look at things perhaps a bit more glowingly than you would, but it really is. I mean, at the time the feel good factor was back. And you had kind of honest players playing for the team as well. A lot of kind of academy lads had kind of made that move through. Of course, Danny Bath was one of them, and Jack Price, and I know they've moved on to other pastures since, but the likes of Lee Evans and things like that. It was a young group that you kind of could easily get behind because that they were honest, kind of hard-working young players with talent to boot. Those years, yeah, were really good. I mean, you had the flair of Sacco, you had you had Dicko who could score the goals. It was a really good team. It was a really good team, and I remember having a conversation with one of my mates actually before that season started. It was when I think it was on the day relegation was confirmed under Saunders, which obviously we know was a bit of a car crash. I remember saying to him, the way we're going, I'll take top half next season. I'll take top half in just so we can consolidate, kind of, the God forbid a third relegation. I mean, I know it probably would have been unrealistic even given what had happened, but it was just in that mindset. And just when you get used to losing games, I don't think it just rubs off on players. I think it goes through the whole club. If you're a fan, you get kind of used to losing and stuff like that. So the scale of the job that Kenny and Nars lads did was truly incredible, really.
No, it was, and I think you're right. It will rightly take its place, in sort of the history and the, when it's chronicled in terms of, the landscape of wars because it was such a key season. I'll let you answer this, but I may know the answer to this because it may have been perhaps a season or two before. What about your sort of your lowest moment as a Wolves fan? What would you signal that? Was there a particular moment when you thought, "Why am I doing this?"
Yeah, that was that kind of last season in the Premier League. I mean, I know the Championship was bad under Saunders, but as bad as it is, I think we just got used to it at that point. I mean, I know we all kind of held on hope that we would get out of it, but I think we just got used to it, and almost towards the end, it was just an acceptance of what was to come. Right, let's get this season just finished now. We need a new regime in place, and hopefully next season will be better, which it was. It's just that end of that Premier League season, and they got rid of Mick, and again, hindsight's a great thing, and it was obviously a very low point losing that much to the Albion, but either keep Mick or get someone, of real kind of Premier League ilk in to have a proper fist of it, and just those last 10 or so games in the Premier League where, of course, Terry Connor. I mean, he felt sorry for him, really. I mean, it weren't his fault, but he was just kind of losing every week and knowing what was coming and not really being able to do anything about it. And it was, I think that was kind of a low point because even though those Premier League years weren't anything as to what they are now, there were still some very good results when there over those few years. Beating Man United at Molineux. And there were some good players, Stevie Fletcher and Kevin Doyle, and obviously the likes of Jarvis and Kitely, who went on to get snapped up by Sunderland and West Ham, which just kind of shows the difference in the club now. I mean, our players won't get poached by teams of that calibre anymore. But it was just knowing that we were going into every game for those last several weeks of the season, just thinking, right, how many are we losing today? It wasn't, are we going to win? It was like, if we can keep it to 1 or 2 now, keep it respectable, then that'll probably be some sort of achievement. So, yeah, I think those are the lowest times. I mean, the Hoddle era as well. wasn't great. I never actually had a season ticket when I was young, because I used to play football myself on Saturdays, and I used to fancy myself as a decent footballer. I don't know if I was. I probably wasn't. But I used to kind of play on Saturdays and stuff like that, and so I couldn't really get to, because I was kind of travelling. It was in one of them like West Midlands regional leagues. So some Saturdays you'd be going to, say, Burton or Derby or something to play a game, and then getting back for the game would be a bit of a stretch. So I could only do kind of 1 in 2 really. So I remember kind of going to the games at the Hoddle, and my dad and my brother, who had a season ticket at the time, both cancelled their season tickets, which I think a lot of people did during that era. I think that was quite a common thing. Those weren't great times either. I mean, it was just 1-1 draw, wasn't it, week after week? So getting used to losing, that's now fun, and draws really on all that fun in the grand scheme of things. So I'd probably say that last Premier League season now, just losing every week and knowing what was coming.
Yeah, and I think this is it, and I think it was just such a confusing time because, as you say, we invested and we thought we'd push on, but I remember at the time there were teams like Swansea, for example, who seemed to just be getting better than us, and I was like, well, we're not really going anywhere. And then the Hoddle era is a different feeling because we weren't probably in danger of going down necessarily, but we weren't in danger of going up. It kind of, for me at that point, it was more about the football and the containment, and it's the kind of, if it's really bad, then it's one thing, but when it's just kind of like, God, this is tough going, then that in itself, it's the apathy, isn't it? I think, which is tough. But I guess sort of on a lighter note, sort of if we look at players, what sort of have been your favourite players since sort of your first time to Molineux to present day?
First one that really caught my imagination was Kenny Miller. As I say, I fancy myself as a footballer growing up, and I was a striker, even though every time people saw me, it was like, oh, well, you're 6 foot for a 12-year-old. You should be a centre half. I was like, no, I'm a striker. And it's like, until I lost all my pace at 15 and then became absolutely useless. But yeah, it was strikers that I kind of always look towards, because it might sound silly, but you'd be looking at them and try and kind of mimic stuff that they did. I just remember Miller just being like, he weren't, say, lightning quick over, say, like 30 yards or something like that, but he just had that burst. And he used to just work his socks off as well. He was just like a kind of a proper striker. That goal against it was against Man United, wasn't it, in that Premier League year as well, where he kind of I think he puts it through West Brown's legs and then just
did he slip? I think did West Brown slip or the defender slip? Yeah, I can't remember.
Well, I mean, he took it really well, and that was kind of like a goal that summed him up. So Miller, in those kind of Jones Hoddle years, it would be Miller, and then going into kind of like McCarthy, it would have been Sylvan Ebanks Blake, and I just remember him being signed. I remember seeing it on like Sky Sports that we'd signed him for £1 million or whatever it was, and I was thinking, we're signing somebody from Plymouth. I know he scored a few goals, but never really heard of him, and just thought, I don't know, I don't know what to think of this. But then as soon as I saw him play, I thought, yeah, he's going to be something. I just think that Charlton goal, which for me might still be my favourite Wolves goal. I mean, I know the Neves goal was amazing against Derby, and it's very little to split them, but just the way he puts Paddy McCarthy on his arse and then smacks it into the top corner is it's just unbelievable, and it kind of encapsulated everything that Sylvan was as a striker. Get kind of back into the defender, use his use his brain to barge him off, just a bit of a sharp turn to create that space, and then just absolutely lever it into the top corner. So he it's always been kind of the strikers that I've really kind of gravitated towards. Jota's my favourite, I'd say now, and probably my favourite ever. Just because the way he runs at players and takes risks, and he's the one really that gets me excited anyway. Traore, of course, runs past players, but Jota runs through them. It's like, it's like skiing, like slaloming through defences, isn't it? It's great to see. Raul, Jimenez is obviously a delight to watch as well, because he's got so much to his game for a number 9. You've pretty much got all the characteristics you'd want from a striker. But Jota, even when he's off form and he's trying too hard and things aren't coming off for him, he kind of, you go on a bit of a journey with him. When he's in those blips, you're just waiting for him to get back to his best, and when he does, it's all the more satisfying. So I'd say Jota, yeah, he's my all-time favourite, really.
Do you know what I mean? You're right. And I think that's the thing with Jota. That's kind of how I feel, and I think you referenced there. He may have invariably has a sort of a slow start, doesn't he, to a season, and then, as you say, when he's kind of a bit out of your form, you're like, can't write this lad off, because it's that sort of, as you brilliantly describe it, it's Slalom sort of, he's coming down the ski slopes, and people and defenders are going left and right and trying to avoid him. He's unplayable. He's got that sort of centre of gravity, and the way he plays is an absolute joy. So that's the present day. It's been brilliant. Really going through sort of the memory lane as it is, in terms of, and we hope football obviously restarts when it's safe to do so. The final thing I've asked a few of the people on this, and I think it's really good to get yourself on for this, for your perspective working for the Express and Star. How much do you kind of find that the city has such a huge part to play with a football club, and vice versa? The club talks about sort of the one pack mentality, but I think it's been so heartening where football's not been on, and football, there's no been games, that the club still feels very much a part of the city.
Yeah, it's massive. It's massive. Speaking to Carl Emery not long back about it, and obviously he'd set up this former players fund for the NHS, and they raised 50 grand, which is fantastic, and a load of kind of former players getting in touch, whether they were superstars at Wolves or whether they were, quite frankly, rubbish for Wolves. They got in touch, they got on board and did their bit to help. And I think he said it himself. I know he's an ambassador for the foundation. He perhaps might have to say it a bit, but I think it does ring true. Is that he says it's not like any other club he's been at. That kind of. Wolves is ingrained in the community and vice versa. And I think being a one club kind of city, it makes it special. I mean, obviously, if you're from Manchester, you've got a couple of options, or you've got, the lesser options if you end up supporting Oldham or something like that. I don't know. But, if you're from London, you've got you've got countless options and whatever. But if you're from Wolverhampton, invariably, you support Wolves, you get a few, glory hunters or whatever supporting Man United, or, well, not so much these days, but usually I'd say 95% of people from Wolverhampton are Wolves fans, or at least have some sort of Wolves allegiance in their family. So it is really special, and during this kind of this pandemic and things like that, it's still kind of the heartbeat of the community. People, United talking about Wolves and just wanting some news on when it's back, and that's why I kind of really take a lot of pride in what I do at the moment, because Wolves is my passion just as much as it's everyone else's. And I know you don't have to be a fan to be a good club journalist. It's not a requisite of it at all. You could be an Albion fan and be a brilliant correspondent for Wolves. That's just the nature of the job. But having grown up a Wolves fan, I do try my best to to kind of represent, those values and make sure people are informed. And so, but kind of going back to the kind of united, city and things like that, it does ring true. It's not just a saying. It's not just, the strength of the wolf is in the pack and stuff like that. It is a catchy motto, if you like, but it does ring true. And especially over these last few years under Neymar, people who had lost interest, who had become a bit disenfranchised, or just for whatever reason had kind of not been following the club as much. It's the talk of the town now. It's on everybody's lips. Me and my brother all have big conversations about Wolves over the phone. Even though we've got other stuff to talk about, Wolves tends to dominate the conversation. It's just it is special, and I think obviously other fans will tell you differently. And I think every fan has a different affinity and special affinity to their particular club, but I do think Wolves is special, and I think a lot of people, even that aren't Wolves fans, do recognise that it is a club that is definitely unique, and obviously a rich history. It's had its trials and tribulations, as we all know, and but now it's on the rise again, and it's becoming a big player. So it's a joy to be following them and covering them. As I'm so lucky to do.
Brilliant, and I think that's the thing. It's I kind of feel it when you go out and about, don't you? And as you say, you must do it, being immersed in the city and through your profession as well. And I went on a run the other day, and I've got my Wolves kit on, and someone will sort of from a distance have a chat with you and stuff, and you can feel it. People want it and kind of and are ready for it to come back. So. As I say, at time of recording, and I suspect when this does go out, football is on pause, and we'll get in obviously to a position there. Hopefully, we'll have some on-field action, as Joe mentioned earlier. In what capacity, we'll wait and see. But if you want to stay informed, obviously we're doing our best on the Wolves Fancast to bring as much content to you during this time. If you follow Joe as well, Joe Edwards on Twitter, I think it's Joe Edwards _star.
Correct.
So if you follow Joe as well, he's keeping us up to date with the moving story, really, in terms of how COVID-19 is affecting football and developments with Wolves on and off the pitch. So follow Joe there as well. And obviously, we've both got our respective podcasts as well. And if you like us and you love the club, then, it's an optimum moment right now to kind of get your fill. And we hope we're giving you something to listen to during these times. So finally, thank you to Joe. It's been a pleasure talking to you.
Yeah, pleasure, mate. Really, really enjoyed this. I mean, as I say, it's always nice to be talking about Wolves, and good to have a chat, mate.
Brilliant. So from both of us, until we speak to you next time, stay safe and stay well.